The statement we hear a lot about AI and its impact on jobs in media is that AI won't necessarily replace you, but someone who can use it just might. It's true that embracing the technology is critical as we move rapidly into this new world. In journalism, my hope is that it will help deal with the churn and let us do a little bit more of the journ to get on with the human element of journalism and relieving us of those tasks that add little value to the end product. But AI is impacting all sectors, of course, and recruitment is one of them. And I want to know how it can solve, in my view, the woefully inefficient world of recruitment. I'm David Spencer, and welcome to the latest episode of the Media Mentor podcast. During this series, I talk to media industry figures and current and former clients about their careers as we tackle some of the key issues that we face when looking to move from job to job. Now, today's episode is with Joe Watkins, the founder of AI Recruit, a startup that he built to fix what's broken in recruitment, his words. He's had a career in data, AI, and recruiting data professionals, and says he saw the same pattern repeat: recruiters drowning in CVs, bias creeping into decisions, and hiring teams wasting hours on admin. Sounds about right to me, and great to help the recruiters. But I also want to know how it helps us, the candidates. Joe, thank you so much for talking to me on this podcast. I guess the first thing to ask is, when we talk about AI and recruitment, what are we talking about that the AI is doing here?
I think that's a great question. I think AI has the power to enhance the recruitment sector in lots of different ways, from the way machines read CVs to the actual process of assessing candidates and ultimately helping companies, but also hopefully candidates, get a better experience through the recruitment process. For example, as a candidate, when you're looking for a job, rather than having to manually search for jobs that are relevant to you, let's say you go on a large organization's website and they might have several hundred jobs available, maybe more, maybe thousands. You have to kind of manually go through that process of finding those jobs. Well, today through AI, it's possible to upload your CV and quickly get recommendations based on your CV on the jobs that would be relevant for you. So that could be like one user case. As a recruiter, you get a CV in, you like the look of the person's CV, and then you want to find out a bit more about that person. Historically, you might pick up the phone and have a short 15, 20-minute conversation just to kind of get to know that candidate a little bit more. Imagine being able to have conversations with itself, think through logically, answering its own questions to try to get a better understanding of what you've just said, and then be able to direct its own course. You can kind of have almost like a human conversation with a machine, and that machine can know your experience because it will have read your CV, it will have understood what that company is looking for in terms of skills, etc. And you can have quite a quick and useful conversation to explain a bit more about your skills, etc.
So those are a couple of areas, Joe, that you talk about where it can kind of help with efficiency. I guess that the issue, and particularly when I speak to clients in media about jobs, we might get 400-500 people apply for a role, sometimes thousands of people apply for a role. So how is that kind of data sifted through efficiently? But I guess we've been using AI to some extent to try and do that already.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think it's really important that people understand kind of the situation we're in within talent acquisition. There's been a 300% increase in the number of people applying for jobs since 2021. I had a friend who works at a large marketplace company. They had a junior role data science job, and they had 1,500 applicants apply. I know another one of our clients, they had 750 people apply for their business analyst role. So on the company side, things have really changed. And that's partly also to do with AI and candidates using AI. So the ability to use AI intelligently to assess candidates quickly at that volume so that you can kind of pinpoint on the candidates that are most relevant is really important in today's market. This has been going on for a little while in terms of trying to attempt to solve this problem. Historically, most companies use something called keyword counting. So you as an employer would put in a handful of words that you'd want to look for, within a person's CV, and then you essentially count how many times those words appear. This kind of led to this kind of cat and mouse game between candidates and companies, where some candidates, savvy candidates, started to put more words on their CV, but then make those words go white on the white background, so you couldn't see it, but obviously the machine could. And then you kind of ended up in this situation where people were gaming the system. And the problem with keyword counting is you don't have any relevancy. You don't have that nuance around why that word is in there. Is it really relevant, etc. That kind of led to the evolution of then kind of synonym counting. So not just a kind of a blank look for this word, but look for this word and these are the words that kind of mean the same thing, but still keyword counting. And where we're kind of getting to today is there's two new approaches in the market. There's kind of take the CV, take the job description, and run it through ChatGPT or similar large language model to then get that model to assess whether the candidate is relevant, and then return kind of why. And then there's an alternative approach which we use at AI Recruit, where we use advanced mathematics to understand kind of the true meaning of the language within the full job description and the full candidate CV. And then what we're able to do is then rank based on the nuance and all the meaning within those two sets of text to then generate a score between 0% relevancy and 100% relevancy. That might sound a little bit scary to some people, but think about in a world where there's 1,500 people who have applied for a job. Now, typically, a lot of people who apply for roles, they're not really super relevant, but there's always those group of people who are. Now, if you're on a traditional system, maybe your CV, you haven't filled it out with loads of keywords, and therefore you might not be ranked as high, or the system might not have any kind of matching technology in it, in which case you're just looking at CVs as they come in order. If you're the 1,500th person to apply, the chances are your CV's probably never going to get read, or if it does, it'll be right towards the end. So there's definitely some big benefits to these technologies from a candidate point of view. So if you tailor your CV to the job description, make sure that the way you're writing the CV is relevant, then these technologies should boost your CV up the list and make sure that you have a much higher chance of being seen by the company and the recruiter.
And I guess that's the key question to anyone listening to this, and those that I've done sessions with have been about what do I put on the CV to try and get through these systems? Do I need to say different things than I might do if I was speaking directly to a human? I guess from my point of view, loaded on top of that question is you've just said, maybe you need to think really about matching the CV to the job description and what the company is saying it needs. So does that mean that you really do have to do a different CV for each job, which is something that just adds to what is a very exhausting process for candidates?
I think that's the best way. I mean, companies have been saying for years, that they want to see candidates rewrite CVs to make them relevant to the job description, and that is, that's going to give you one of the best chances of actually getting past that very initial stage of, someone's read my CV, do they think I've got the right skills? You remember, there are lots of people applying for these jobs, so anything you can do to kind of give yourself that edge is a good thing to do. We have tools available to us that make that whole process more efficient from a candidate point of view. I've been a candidate. I've applied for jobs. It's hard work applying for jobs and trying to provide a relevant CV to every job that you like the look of. But with things like Google Gemini, ChatGPT, other large language models, what you can do is you can now take the job description, you can take your CV, and you can get those tools to assist you with your CV writing, for example.
I saw an advert recently where there was a task attached to the application, and it said anyone using AI to complete the task would be rejected automatically. And my first thought was, well, how are they going to know if you use AI well? And in journalism, one of the things that we're learning is, as I said at the start of this episode, really, the mindset isn't that AI is going to replace journalists, but will replace some of the work that we do. And it's about using AI effectively. So when you say about using it in applications and candidates thinking about saving some of that workload that exists in the job hunt, That's really what it's about, isn't it? Using it for maybe ideas or shaping or framing something and then making it unique, which should, in theory, if you use it well, ease some of that burden, some of that workload.
To your first question about how would they know, I'm not sure how they would know. There's tools out there that are trying to identify whether AI has been a large language model has been used to write text. We tried some of them. We didn't think they were great. The ones we tried, maybe there's ones out there that we haven't found. But this technology is moving so fast, and one of my concerns is that, well, just because I use ChatGPT to help me write the answer doesn't mean that it's not what's in there isn't true. There are people out there who they might be dyslexic or whatever, and they're using these tools to help them, put their best foot forwards. Everything in there is true. So if you were to flag that this answer has used ChatGPT or whatever, I think there's a real danger there of putting people out of the process who very much deserve to be in there. And the fact that people know how to use it in a way that gets results, I think, is actually a positive. Using it to create ideas is a fantastic way to use these tools. I think there is a real challenge for companies, though, and employers when it comes to more testing of hard skills, technical skills, because for tasks, you can use large language models to really help you get the answer. And I think there's a much bigger question there then around, well, is it right or wrong to use ChatGPT? If ChatGPT can help you get the answer, is that actually a problem? Or what's your goal as an employer with these processes and testing people's skill sets? You could go all the way back to having people come into the office, sit down in a room with no access to the internet to then test what they actually know. I'm not sure many people have got like the perfect answer to this yet.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point about where the recruitment process goes alongside using AI. For example, in academia, we have a lot of concerns about students submitting work that may use AI because of its ease of access now, because it's much more common. And what we did for one of the modules was something that required a face-to-face interview. Instead of a submission of an essay, we interviewed, like a radio interview or a podcast interview, each of the students, and they had to physically be there and then talk to us about their projects. And in the same way in recruitment, you might develop some processes that maybe at the second stage you can introduce that kind of help to alleviate some of those sort of concerns about AI actually literally doing the task that you describe.
Then it opens a whole kind of worms then around people working in other countries, for example, or a long way from the office. Even a face-to-face call over video is, there's tools out there that can help you in real time answer people's questions. So there's all sorts of challenges. And yeah, I think this is the real question that a lot of people are asking.
And I guess one of the things that people are doing here, because you mentioned it a couple of times about using AI, it doesn't mean that there's a lie. We know we don't lie on CVs. We shouldn't do. We see the cases where in the media that gets exposed, or in the silly example of The Apprentice each series when they do those awful interview sessions and pick out things on people's CVs. But actually, we do tend to think of AI as something that is not necessarily the truth, or we associate AI with things that are false, which is a real misconception.
We weren't waiting for AI to come along for people to learn how to lie on their CVs. I mean, people have been able to do that for a very long time. And I agree. I think there's this interesting mindset around AI and a lack of truth, which is not necessarily founded. I think one thing that people complain about is getting quite similar styles of CV when ChatGPT has been used, or another large language model, and I can kind of understand that. So I think it's important as a candidate to think about to not get lazy, I guess, to not just type into a large language model, write me my CV, and then just copy and paste it in. Even if stuff in there is true, if you haven't made too many changes, then these models can be a bit repetitive. So you might find that the recruiter sees 5 or 6 or more CVs that all have the same kind of tonal feeling, and you kind of lose that authenticity a little bit. So yeah, kind of as we were discussing earlier, I think these tools are great for generating ideas, but don't over rely on it. Make sure that you still got your authentic self in there.
And just finally, Joe, in terms of where we are, this is the area you're working in. We in media talk about AI all the time. Sometimes we frame the stories wrongly. Sometimes we associate it with things being false and things not being factually correct. But we know that we are going to be using AI day to day a lot more over the coming years. But is your week generally trying to keep up with where the tech is? Because it seems to move so quickly. And when we talk about recruitment, it seems that, I'll be honest, the processes need to be improved. AI could really help with that, but it's so fast moving.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. Quite simple. Yeah, things are moving so fast, and you don't know exactly where it's going to go. There seems to be new models coming out all the time. It's a very exciting time. There's lots of really cool, innovative ideas as well coming off the back of some of the technologies that are being created. We'll have to see what comes along, but I think you're right that there's lots of ways that these tools can help, especially around the admin, the tasks that take a long time but don't necessarily add the most value. These tools can really come in and take some of that heavy lifting off so that people can do what people do best, which is communicating with people, making sure that candidates are getting a great experience, spend more time with the really great candidates that you want to get into your business, really bring that human touch rather than filling in forms, putting in data, etc.
Joe, I'm sure that this is going to develop fast, and I'm absolutely certain that people listening will have had other questions listening to some of the things you say. So it's a topic, no doubt, that we'll come back to on the Media Mentor podcast. But make sure that during our chat, you haven't missed out on any updates and developments in the AI world, because 20 minutes has passed and something may well have happened. But I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for chatting to us.
No problem. Thanks, David.
Really, really interesting stuff from Joe there. And although I might not agree that humans, especially in media, are great at communication, I do take his point overall. AI can help make some things more efficient and, importantly, more effective. My fear is that, like in journalism, companies will see the immediate cost benefits of reducing staff rather than helping those teams do their jobs better and, in the end, make the company stronger. Short-termism can often win. Well, however it plays out, AI is not going away, and you do have to embrace it. Hopefully you've learned something from this episode, so thank you to Joe for his insight. Thanks too to Mrs. Mentor for maintaining the job feed and keeping the pages of the website refreshed and updated, and thank you to Josh Summer for writing this music. Remember, I have a whole bunch of web pages for media jobs across radio and podcast, video and TV production, comms and social media, and print and online journalism, with a page dedicated to starter roles and schemes. And there's my WhatsApp channel where all the jobs that I find get shared as they drop. You'll find the link for that at the top of my website, or there are details in the pod description. Remember to click follow on your favourite podcast player to keep up to date with the latest episodes, and please write a review if you've enjoyed listening.